In 2018, the Carters, Beyonce and Jay-Z released this new music video for Ape Shit, a song very poignantly underlining Black excellence. As icons of this new generation, Beyonce and Jay-Z have done a lot of things to redefine culture. And their video is kind of a mesmerizing take on icons and their making, on pushing the boundaries of what institutional art can be. What belongs to high culture is different for everyone, and for the Carters, it's them. Or at least it's Black art, Black artists, and Black stories. But this was not their first foray into disputing icons and rebranding history to highlight Black stories. In 2017, as a way to announce their world tour, Jay-Z and Beyonce were pictured on a motorcycle. A somewhat innocuous picture to some, but a clear reference to the 1973 Senegalese movie Touki Bouki. A movie that didn't really have as much success as one would expect when it came out in 1973, suddenly became an icon again. Not only an icon for Senegalese cinema or even African cinema, but for Black stories in general. So how did this small movie achieve that? Touki Bouki is kind of an unlikely candidate for the narrative that was attributed to it later. The movie came out in 1973 to mixed reactions. The film is about Mori and Anta, a nonconformist young couple fed up with their homeland of Senegal, who try to escape to Europe, or more specifically, to France. Mori, a cattle herder, heads into the capital on his moped. Having dreamt up a master plan, he devises various schemes to make it work. Fraud, theft, prostitution are all part of his plan. A streetwise student at the Dakar University, Anta, has the smarts to put Mori's plans into action. They zip like outlaws through the streets of Dakar on Mori's moped, desperately seeking some way out of the city. Finally, when Anta's lover and accomplice abandons her at the ferry, she ends up traveling to France, alone. Touki Bouki came from the mind of first-time filmmaker but long-time film lover Djibril Diop Mambéty, who wanted to tell a story about his experiences in Africa.
La tête fonctionne, mais pas plus que le cœur. Il y a toute une histoire qui se crée selon la direction du vent que vous voulez. L'histoire se crée. Et puis, on ouvre les yeux. On a une histoire. C'est très simple. À chaque fois que vous voulez voir la lumière, il faut fermer les yeux.
But even if the movie was praised at the Cannes Film Festival and recognized by some at the time, it didn't really reach the status of icon until fairly recently. A shoestring budget, a group of inexperienced actors and producers, and a dream really play into the mythos of the movie. But at the time, it also meant harsh criticism and a lukewarm response at best. So why is there this sudden interest in a Senegalese movie from 1973?
C'est ce matin-là que tout commença. C'était à Dakar. J'ai du travail chez les Blancs.
Well, it certainly isn't like any other movie of the era. For starters, it's kind of vague about post-colonialism politics in the country. It's definitely not Ousmane Sembène's movies, putting people face to face with the issues at hand.
Vous permettez, mademoiselle? Je n'ai jamais embrassé une négresse.
Touki Bouki is not a classic take on post-colonial realistic politics. See, Touki Bouki is interested in politics insofar as politics are everywhere, and its take on revolutionary post-colonialism is pretty much the same. It's kind of around. You'd see it on the street. And you see it in one highly significant scene where Maury is attacked by a group of young left-wing intellectuals who despise him for his apolitical and amoral lifestyle.
C'est à cause d'un badolo comme toi qu'elle vient toujours en retard en réunion. Attends voir. C'est pour nous moucharder qui t'ont déguisé en cowboy.
But despite his ideology, or lack thereof, Maury is still subject to the post-colonial context, even if he blatantly doesn't want to partake in it. So even if it isn't a direct message, the movie does show how colonialism can infiltrate people's lives, and even their dreams.
Mais kooku du graaw dañuy clandestine dugal rek na kooku du problème parce que wis ngay jaay réussir nañu am tuuti xaalis tuuti mon comme ça bu ñu duggee ci biir di ñax ay pot xaw a fagaru ba leer noonu ko xam nga lu wax ah leer ñax pot yi fii booy bu la romb nga sànni ko 2500 francs sax sa cigare kenn du la nand ma xam dara laaj na suñu dellu see fii ma nekk kilifa kenn du ma ñeme woo te waxuloo monsieur Maury.
So a part of Touki Bouki's appeal is certainly the fact that there's no particular ideological perspective here, just some people's lives and how they relate to the context, how they are affected. You can read it on any level you'd like. Maybe you understand and apply the post-colonial effect of the métropole on your reading of the movie, or maybe you just relate to wanting to leave your own small town for a bigger one, maybe even leaving for Paris. The movie certainly wants you to know about Paris. From the hard cuts, to the close-ups and the framing, and sometimes even the color palette, these are all good reminders of the influences for the movie, which are at least very close to the French New Wave. Obviously, the movie wears its influences on its sleeve. The techniques are close, but you just get to see them in a new context. The plot is also pretty recognizable. If you think about it, Touki Bouki's main plot drive is one of running away. Yes, it is prompted by this idealistic view of France, but the main thrust is still about finding freedom and traveling. Road movies were not new by any means, but by 1973, they had steadily become a staple of cinema. Movies like Easy Rider portrayed rebels seeking freedom on their motorcycles. Paper Moon returned to the Great Depression era in order to portray the road as a last-ditch attempt at success.
Let's give him some money.
No.
Just a little bit. We got $305.16.
Whole nother business giving it away.
Bonnie and Clyde, which had come out a few years earlier, is probably the closest to Touki Bouki's main plot, and again uses the backdrop of the Great Depression to frame a love story between outlaws on the road.
Honey?
Please, honey, don't never leave me without saying nothing.
Touki Bouki has parallels with all of these stories, but once again, the context gives a fresh new feel to a well-trodden narrative. These similarities might explain why the movie was so easy to sell as an icon of African cinema. But who were the people involved in introducing it to the masses first? Well, it certainly wasn't the Carters. Director Martin Scorsese was among the first to participate in the restoration of this movie in order to put it in distribution again. This was a part of his World Cinema project, which aimed to reinstate movies among the pantheon of classics.
Touki Bouki was made in 1973 for $30,000 and is something else again. It's a cinematic poem made with a raw, wild energy about a young couple who dream of leaving for France. Touki Bouki was conceived at the time of a very violent crisis in my life, said Mbete. I wanted to make a lot of things explode, and that's just what he did. Touki Bouki explodes one image at a time.
And once the movie was remastered, it could be distributed anywhere. And indeed, it became omnipresent.